I'd like on behalf of IUCN Secretariat Regions of Africa to wish to thank the organizers of the Africa Environmental Law Congress and also to thank all the participants in your various capacities for your continued participation through the last 2 days. A special thanks to the chair, IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, Justice Antonio Benjamin, for his personal, persistent, consistent interest and commitment to further environmental justice in Africa. So, Antonio, if you were around, we would not give you an award, we would give you a name. That's what we do in Africa. If you're one of us, we end up giving you a name. And I think Madam Mrema might suggest for you a Kiswahili name because Kiswahili is much more spoken in Africa. And special thanks to Justice Nicholas Robinson for the many years of commitment to environmental law. Congratulations again to Madam Elizabeth Mrema and to Ali Mko for the special award and the recognition. To the theme of this Congress, water, desertification and law, IUCN has had a long history of engagement on water and wetland conservation, as well as building dry land resilience with the aim of addressing land degradation, especially in arid and semi-arid landscapes. People rights are central to both these themes, ranging from availability and access to water to their participation in the management of these landscapes in order to support poverty reduction, equitable development, resilience to climate change, and conservation of biological diversity. Suffice it to say, all of this interface with the law, particularly in protecting the rights of the poor and the marginalized. On behalf of the Secretariat of IUCN in Africa, we look forward to continue to work with the judges, lawyers, legal practitioners in Africa to promote the protection of the environment for both people and nature. Once again, many thanks, and we look forward to continued interactions even after this Congress. Thank you.
Well, I second all of the wonderful words that Luther has presented just now. I would note that this wonderful symposium, conference, Congress that we've just been having these 2 days, and the high quality of the papers and the presentations by professors and judges and other experts in environmental law confirms the observations that were made with respect to both the awards to Ali and Elizabeth. But most importantly, I want to congratulate all of you for the Buchnadi Declaration on African Environmental Law. This wonderful declaration captures and sums up our accomplishments to date, but also the challenges that we have coming into the near future. I think we should take this declaration and present it to the IUCN World Conservation Congress in Marseille. I will talk to a number of our IUCN members about a special resolution to do that. And I think we need to project the thinking in that declaration globally. As Elizabeth said, we are on the verge of the next pandemic. By destroying the interface of wildness that nature has, we have allowed the viruses to leave their native hosts and go into humans looking for another place to live. And if we don't begin to treat all of the earth as one health, as one place where all of the same environmental care standards should apply, we and our children and our grandchildren will not have the peaceful existence with nature that we've been having up till now for the last 10,000 years. We've destroyed one of the great bonds with nature by disrupting wild nature. We need to move towards stabilizing the natural areas around the world The African Convention on the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources is in fact a major step and a model globally for how to do that on a continental scale. I think the marvelous presentation we had of the Grande Muraille Verte, the Great Green Wall, is a global message that it's not just about desertification. It's about a continental approach to restoring a natural phenomenon, the vegetation on which human life depends. We are subordinate to the plant life of this continent and indeed this earth, this planet. If we don't support the trees and the plants, there's no place for us or the insects or the other mammals and creatures to have their homes. So this conference focusing on water and desertification is really about life itself. And I've been inspired by and learned from the different papers that I've been privileged to hear. I think we have a clear message going forward with the Declaration on African Environmental Law that we can share with other regions. And I want to congratulate everyone who has been helping organize this symposium, its sponsors. I feel we have been virtually in Rabat these days, and it's been a great privilege. So thank you very much.
Okay, Nick and Luther, you are chairing. So if you can give the floor to Elizabeth Mrema. So I do on your behalf. Elizabeth Mrema, you have the floor.
Thank you very much again. I hope you will not be tired of hearing my voice again. But let me begin first to you all justices, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and to all the organizers of these 3 days of the Congress. It indeed gives me great privilege to be offering this keynote address during the final session of the African Environmental Law Congress organized by the WCL together with UNEP and the Hassan Second International Center for Environmental Training. Thank you very much. I'm particularly honored to be speaking here, given the significance of environmental law, water, and desertification, even in my own life. And I always like to begin with my own childhood story, which continues to inspire on what I'm doing and we are doing today. As a young girl, growing up in the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro, my family and neighbors were all blessed with abundance of clean water, vibrant forest, fertile cropland. We experienced regular rains, which ensured a stable supply of food and drinking water for people and animals in the region. And we had little need to turn our minds to these resources ever diminishing or vanishing. However, as poet Robert Frost once said, nothing gold can stay. Indeed, nothing gold can stay. To sustain the growing population in the region, as well as development needs, we began seeing forests gradually converted to firewood, building supplies, and open land to house the people of the area. Forest cover came decreased rainfall levels and altered weather patterns, lower levels of clean drinking water, and less arable land. Where water was once freely available, women and children must now sometimes walk some kilometers in search of daily drinking water. What a shame. For firewood is still, for many, the source of energy, even further depleting the forest reserves. The same phenomena has been witnessed around the globe, and particularly in Africa, where 2/3 of the continent can be classified as desert or drylands, and 3/4 of cultivable land is estimated to have been degraded or eroded, with deforestation being one of the main drivers of this growing crisis. Continued exploitation of nature for the benefit of mankind has resulted in the triple planetary crisis of climate, nature, desertification, and pollution. As a species, we have been responsible, and I mean we human beings, for the disappearance of 83% of all wild animals and over 50% of all plants. And we have drastically altered our ecosystem, including 75% of ice-free land, 65% of marine environments, and 85% of the wetlands have disappeared or degraded. The role of environmental law in addressing these crises is one of central and fundamental importance. This is the reason this conference was held under the banner of a critical decade for environmental law. Indeed, we cannot have a sustainable decade of environmental law and yet seeing all areas of environment being degraded or disappearing. The stakes have never been higher, as scientists have sounded an alarm bells that this is the last decade we have to either reverse the unprecedented nature and biodiversity loss and solve the climate crisis. Otherwise, we are doomed, which will coincide with the implementation period of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In fact, it will also coincide with the end of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework currently being negotiated for adoption at our next 15th Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, albeit delayed for almost 2 years now. In recognition of the importance of firm policy and legal commitments to ensure fulfillment of ambitions as part of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration and later post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, member states are encouraged to do the following. 1, foster political will, mobilization of resources, capacity building, scientific research and cooperation, and momentum for reversing and halting biodiversity loss and ecosystem restoration at all levels. 2, mainstream the content of the Global Biodiversity Framework after its adoption, as well as ecosystem restoration, into policies and plans to address current national development priorities and challenges coming from degradation of nature and ecosystems. And 3rd, develop and implement policies and plans to prevent further nature loss and ecosystem degradation in line with national laws and priorities. So, some key messages from me in this regard. Number 1, the recent release of the draft post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework sets out 4 main actionable goals and 21 action-oriented targets under these goals to enable us to reach the 2050 vision and the 2030 mission, grouped into 3 categories. 1, reducing threats to biodiversity. 2, meeting people's needs through sustainable use and benefit sharing. And 3, tools and solutions for implementation and mainstreaming. This coming decade is already threatened by our scientists as our last chance for transformative changes will therefore be pivotal in accomplishing these goals. Inevitably, countries require strong legal and institutional frameworks to back up the ambition with tangible, implementable actions. The first draft version of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework has also underscored the importance of focused and urgent action on managing nature and biodiversity through to 2030 with a long-term vision of living in harmony with nature by 2050. I encourage all of you to read the current draft in advance of the upcoming negotiations for it from 23rd August to 3rd September, and again in January 2022, in readiness for its adoption at the next conference of the parties in Kunming, China. As environmental lawyers, there is need to ensure that the emerging draft framework will be implementable with appropriate and within the legal and institutional frameworks in your countries. Furthermore, that the judiciary can also use the same to adjudicate relevant cases as part of their contribution to ensure effective conservation and sustainable use of nature, as well as benefit sharing of the resources accruing from nature or biodiversity. In it, we have set out 4 long-term goals for 2050 related to the 2050 vision of living for biodiversity. These are: 1, enhancing integrity of all ecosystems with a total increase of 15% in the area connectivity and integrity of natural systems. 2, valuing, maintaining, or enhancing nature's contribution through conservation and sustainable use. And 3, ensuring the benefits derived from the utilization of genetic resources that are shared fairly and equitably. And 4, closing the gap between available and other means of implementation and those necessary to enable us achieve the 2050 vision. Without a strong, coordinated institutional framework backed up by a progressive legal framework with such long-term goals have little hope of being achieved. And let us make no mistake, we have been witnessing many encouraging trends in environmental law over the past several decades, including increased inclusion of language directed at procedural and substantive rights to a healthy environment in over 150 countries' constitutions that have included such languages so far. We have witnessed increased development of overarching framework environmental laws, climate change laws, rather than piecemeal legal approaches to environmental issues, and an increasing establishment of dedicated courts and tribunals specializing in environmental law-related cases around the world. We have also been witnessing other innovative approaches to the impacts of climate change on increasing desertification, decreasing clean water supplies in Africa and around the world. For example, the Great Green Wall, which has been a subject of discussion in this Congress, originally conceived and launched in 2007 by the African Union, aims to slow and eventually reverse the onset of desertification in the Sahel region of Africa by restoring 100 million hectares of degraded land into a forest stretching 8,000 kilometers across the continent, resulting in the sequestration of 250 million tons of carbon, creating 10 million green jobs in the process by 2030. This ambitious project is well underway with the aim of completion by 2030. However, we must be wary of becoming complacent in the face of these positive steps forward. At times in the past, our great ambition was not met by an equally transformative action in relation to set environmental targets. For example, in 2020, we passed the deadline to achieve the 2011-2020 Aichi biodiversity targets, having fully met none of them, despite notable progress made towards the targets as a whole, with only 6 targets having been partially achieved. And since then, at least now, 1 target on protected areas, target 11, has now, at least by this year, 17% being achieved. It is clear that these occurrences are less than desirable and may be the basis for feeling discouraged, especially when viewed through the lens of the current global situation. Nonetheless, we must refuse to allow this discouragement to lead to future inaction. Ongoing COVID-19 pandemic situation and its resulting lockdowns leading to severe social in terms of health and job losses, economic, environmental, and developmental challenges and impacts across the world is a clear reminder of how urgent transformative actions are needed today and beyond. Scientists are reminding us that if no appropriate actions are taken today, we should be ready for even more serious and severe pandemics in future than what we see and we have seen currently. My key message too, COVID-19 crisis has afforded us with this opportunity to reassess our role as the stewards of the planet. The coming year will allow us to gather at upcoming meetings and calibrate our next steps in ensuring our approaches to biodiversity, desertification, and climate change are coordinated, effective, and time-bound. The past 18 months have unquestionably brought about unprecedented change to our planet, our way of life as a species, and our perceptions of humanity's role as the stewards of the planet. As a result of the COVID-19 crisis, we are now obliged to reassess our relationship with biodiversity and the network of ecological systems that maintain planet's health. Through this crisis, we have been given an opportunity in the form of a great reset button, allowing us to re-imagine and reinvent our interactions with nature and find new approaches to maintain biodiversity and the environment, while at the same time safeguarding our human health and our economies. The upcoming 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, or COP15, as well as the COP serving as the meetings of the parties, COP MOPs 10 and 4 respectively, to its two biodiversity protocols on biosafety and access and benefit sharing, all to be held in Kunming, China, will be the prime opportunity to recalibrate our next steps. These conferences will equally witness the adoption of innovative, transformative, and universal post-2020 global biodiversity framework as a stepping stone towards the Convention's 2050 vision of living in harmony with nature, and a pathway to achieving sustainable development goals. The implementation of this framework will be universal and thus expected to be undertaken by all stakeholders, facilitated through multi-sectorial reforms, including legislative and institutional measures. As discussed earlier during this conference, we are all anticipating other meetings and conferences over this year and next year that will allow us to align messages or create synergies and bring together great minds in the field of environmental law, science, and economics. We'll have the climate change COP26 later this year in November. We'll have the UN Environment Assembly, the second part, February, March next year. We will have the Desertification conference next year, either May or October. We'll have the Ocean Conference and the 9th World Water Forum in March next year. And we have our Conference of the Parties. All these meetings will afford us further opportunity to reassess and realign our priorities, ensuring that our future ambition are met by equally great actions for the next decade. My sincere thanks to the organizers of this IUCN African Environmental Law Congress for facilitating and encouraging expert dialogues on the topics which are so dear to the continent: desertification, water, and environmental law, not only in relation to Africa, but also to the planet. I will eagerly await the published outcomes of these talks and look forward to seeing you all at the upcoming Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity as we chart our future for the planet moving forward. Thank you very much.
Well, many thanks to Elizabeth, to our two co-chairs. It's a pity that we don't have more time to expand on the deep analysis that Elizabeth made on the COP and the post-COP. We just wish her and her team all the success in this endeavor. We are all together on this. And many thanks to Professor Nicholas Robinson and to Luther Anukur. We'll be, I'm sure you're going to stay with us. We move to the closing ceremony and special thanks. And it's my great pleasure to invite my dear friend Grethel Aguilar, the Deputy Director of IUCN, a distinguished member of the World Commission on Environmental Law, former Vice President of WCL, originally from Costa Rica, but she is in fact Latin America. That's how we see her. But it's also someone that is respected globally. She has been a regional director for IUCN, and I don't need to say that she has been one of the most effective regional directors that we had. And Professor Christina Voigt, that has been with us since the very beginning. I will give the floor to both of them, and so they can conduct the closing ceremony. I'll just add to this list, if both of you allow, that WCL would like to invite our colleague, our host, main organizer locally, Ayman Cherkaoui, to, at the very end, close the event on behalf of me, the steering committee, and the members of WCL. Professor Voigt and Grethel Aguilar.
Thank you very much, Antonio, and good afternoon, bonjour to everybody. Allow me first to express my sincere thanks to the Mohammed Foundation 6 for Environmental Protection, Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training, the UN Environment Program, all the organizers and donors of this conference for all the excellent arrangements made. Allow me also to express my appreciation to IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, and its tireless and visionary chair, Justice Antonio Herman Benjamin, my friend. When I think about environmental law in Africa, my mind goes to beautiful and rich landscapes and to the people that would like to protect the environment in which they live and to have a good quality of life. Sustainable development takes relevance here, understanding that economic, social, and environmental actions need to find the perfect balance to achieve prosperity and environmental justice for all. Conflict, poverty, pandemics such as COVID-19, economic crisis, and refugee flows take the world's attention today. But we need to understand that the absence of environmental management, proper laws, and its correct implementation in many cases are part of the drivers of this crisis. We have heard during the past 2 days how judges, prosecutors, lawyers, and civil society in general are contributing to the achievement of this desirable sustainable development. We just heard from Elizabeth Mrema some good news related to restoration efforts in Africa, and also the pending tasks that we have ahead. The successful implementation of Agenda 2030, that we call a plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity, requires precisely an integrated approach and effective and accountable institutions and actions. African countries have now adopted national environmental legislation and are part of the most important multilateral environmental agreements, including regional agreements such as the Bamako Convention, the Nairobi Convention, the Lusaka Agreement, just to mention some of the important regional agreements. We now better understand the multiple threats to biodiversity and people. The theme of this Congress, water, desertification, and law, presents one of the most important challenges the world and Africa confronts today. As desertification continues to impact Africa and other parts of this planet, water crises are expected to continue raising political tensions between countries and forcing people to migrate. Eradicating, for example, hunger will depend on the efforts to address the global problems of desertification, land degradation, and water scarcity, and one of the effective implementation of national laws and multilateral agreements. But understanding only takes us so far. We must act on our knowledge, and here environmental law has a critical role to play. There are urgent actions we must take, such as exploring the complementarity of international human rights law and desertification. It is urgent to recognize the close relation between human rights, environmental protection, and the value of customary law and institution, respecting cultures and diversity of knowledge. It is urgent to develop and implement policies and laws that effectively confront the challenges in marginal drylands. And it is urgent to improve and strengthen effective compliance and enforcement of laws at national, regional, and international levels. For environmental rule of law to be realized, special attention needs to be paid to the inclusion of indigenous peoples and local communities in the actions we take. In the last 50 years, we have seen progress in the development of environmental law at all levels. On the other hand, it is clear that this is a critical decade for environmental law, and that the environmental rule of law is a shared responsibility. There is much to do because the challenges move with the time, and there is no such a thing as laws that cannot respond to human needs. With the law on our side at all levels, much can be protected in Africa and much can be achieved. Allow me now to have the pleasure to introduce to you the president of IUCN, Mr. Zhang Xinsheng, keynote speaker of this closing part of the Congress. Mr. Zhang Xinsheng is the president of IUCN, elected in 2012 and re-elected at the 2016 World Conservation Congress. Mr. Zhang also serves as a research member of the International Strategy of the Advisory Commission, China State Council. He co-founded and serves as executive chairman of the Eco Forum Global, a China forum committed to a green and sustainable future, and to advancing the building of an eco-civilization. Mr. Zhang was elected president of the executive board of UNESCO and served as a member of this board for 8 years. He held positions in China's central, provincial, and municipal governments. He was elected for 2 consecutive tenures, 1989 and 1997, as mayor of the city of Zhengzhou. As China Deputy Minister of Education between 2001 and 2009, Mr. Zhang was in charge of educational policy, regulations, and international exchange and cooperation. Mr. Zhang received a master's degree in design studies with distinction at the Graduate School of Design, Harvard University. He also completed the advanced management program at Harvard University School. And prior to that, he graduated from the Military Institute of Technology of China and St. Jan University. He has been awarded doctors honoris causa by universities in the United States, Australia, and the Russian Federation and Japan. Mr. Zhang will be with us via video, and let me now welcome Mr. Zhang. Thank you.
Fellow speakers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to address you at the closing of this event, hosted in a hybrid format at the Hassan II International Environmental Training Center in Morocco. This African Environmental Law Congress is the 3rd event in the 2nd World Environmental Law Congress series, organized by the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. Over the past 2 days, you have shared experiences and exchanged good practices regarding the environmental law and policy, with a specific focus on water and desertification. You have identified challenges and solutions to the current and the future environmental issues that the world, and particularly Africa, is facing. Indeed, more than ever, the world is witnessing the effect of our decisions as a global community. As rightfully pointed out by the Director General, our capacity to deal with environmental challenges will surely determine the future of the people and the planet. We have the opportunity to build back better for nature, and law is one of the greatest tools we have as we look forward to the future. This is a time of great challenges, but also of great opportunities. Let us work together to address those challenges and seize these opportunities. Dear colleagues and friends, key international conferences and meetings that will be happening during the next few months and next year to provide important opportunities to outline such collaborative work. Among others, the IUCN World Conservation Congress in Marseille, France, the Food Summit, System Summit, the United Nations Climate Change Conferences, COP26, the United Nations Environmental Assembly, the UNCBD COP15, and the UNCCD COP15 are historical opportunities to set out a better direction, leaving no one behind for the next decade. In this sense, the levels of ambition and action in terms of the conservation needs to be greater. Similarly, national, regional, and global legal frameworks and systems will have to prioritize the protection of the environment in order to promote economic and the social well-being that is sustainable. Leaders and experts from around the world have to work together to find the solutions to the environmental crisis the world is facing. This is something that cannot be done by one government or one organization alone. IUCN has a privilege to be the platform where governments, scientists, policy and legal experts can come together to promote and enhance conservation of the natural world. To achieve this, IUCN relies on science and data on the state of biodiversity and protected areas. Particularly through the red and green list, our organization has also played a key role in initiating and drafting major international conventions. Looking ahead, dear fellow colleagues and friends, IUCN will keep engaged with policymakers and legal practitioners to bring forward more ambitious and impactful environmental, legal, policy frameworks needed to face global environmental challenges. The effective implementation of these legal frameworks depends on many factors, from enhancing the science and the policy link to strengthening the judiciary without forgetting the adequate protection of those who sacrifice their lives for the environment. Dear fellow colleagues and friends, the task is not easy. Success will depend on understanding that we can only do this together. I would like to finish my intervention by congratulating the World Commission on Environmental Law, as well as the United Nations Environmental Program, and the Mohammed VI Foundation for Environmental Protection, chaired by Her Royal Highness Princess Lala Hasna, for successfully delivering this Congress and for highlighting the importance of the law at the forefront of the global conservation efforts, including in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you also, Grethel, for your wonderful remarks. And with that, we are moving to our closing panel of the Congress, and I would like to invite the speakers to stay ready. I would first like to invite Robert Wabunoha. Robert serves as the Regional Coordinator of Environmental Governance for the United Nations Environment Program at the Africa Office. Robert holds a Master of Law in Energy, Environment and Natural Resources Law from the Makerere University in Kampala in Uganda. He has supported the development and implementation of several national and regional environmental laws and policies, multilateral environmental agreements, including those specific to Africa that we've been discussing throughout the Congress. Robert has also authored, in addition to his policy work, he has authored a number of publications on various aspects of sustainable development policy and law. Robert, can I invite you to please take the floor?
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for those kind introductions. Chair, distinguished participants, all protocol observed. Let me first start by applauding the long-standing cooperation UNEP has with IUCN, with World Environment Law and IUCN Environment Law Center, and the whole of the IUCN family, not only for this Congress, but also for the other work in which we do together. It is such type of cooperation that is needed in advancing the cause of environmental law in Africa, but also in the whole world. In the same manner, I wish to thank the Mohammed VI Foundation for accepting to host us. You have done Africa very proud. Thank you, my brother Ayman, for carrying that heavy load. You have done it very well. I also join others in thanking the facilitators, the speakers, co-chairs, and all those invisible people for such a wonderful and successful, seamless work of this Congress. I pay special thanks to my brother, Justice Antonio Benjamin, the chair, IUCN World Commission on Environment Law, for being that Africa's brother from another mother. That is what we call you and say here in Africa. You are a true citizen of Mother Africa, Benjamin. My hope is that even when the world opens up for in-person and physical engagements or meetings, we should continue with this new normal of having dedicated regional environmental law congresses. From where I stand in UNEP Africa office, managing environmental governance matters and environmental law, such regional engagements have greatly advanced Africa's vision. We will promote the use of the 2021 Bucknell Declaration on Environmental Law in Africa throughout our work on this continent. We are here in Africa seeing great strides and results in this type of regional collectiveness, or Ubuntu, as my namesake Robert Kibugi said yesterday, in many areas of environmental management. Judiciaries in Africa have established their biennial symposia on environmental law. Judicial training institutions have formed a network on environmental law. In fact, they are having their annual conference later this year in September. Government lawyers are also forming a network of environmental lawyers to handle common interests. The environmental law lecturers, as Elizabeth has just been talking, have an association since 2004 to advance legal education on environmental matters. They have this week been having a sub-regional meeting on pedagogical development of environmental law education. The ministers and the AMSEN and the African Environment Ministerial Conference handle the policy and political issues. We are having the African group of negotiators on climate change and biodiversity. They are doing a very good job of Ubuntu. These are some of Africa's pride. My message, therefore, is that this IUCN Congress will be the next pride to harvest in Africa. For us in UNEP, we'll continue doing our part of supporting and inspiring such efforts. Personally, I pledge to grow the African membership of the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law with special emphasis on the young ones before I leave the stage. Let me end my brief thanks on three important matters. The first is to congratulate my dear brother and sister, the recipients of this award. Congratulations, Mama Elizabeth, Maruma, Mrema, and Mzee Professor Ali Makwea. These awards are not for you alone as individuals. I think Mama Mrema said it very well. They are for conserving and sustaining humanity. As we celebrate you, you need to realize that the whole of Africa is celebrating with you. We are equally celebrants of these awards. In my home country, Uganda, we have a saying which states that when one of us becomes rich, we are all rich. And therefore, we are also rich in this award with you, Professor Ali and Elizabeth. Last but not least, I wish to pay tribute to the late Professor Charles Odidi Okidi, who passed away on the 19th of April, 2021. The late Charles was a member of the IUCN World Congress on Environmental Law. He was my mentor, and also I think we all agree he was the godfather of environmental law. What is satisfying to me is that his contribution is firmly engraved in the quest for sustaining humanity and in environmental law globally and in Africa. I thank you for listening to me. I so yield the floor to you, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for your kind words and thank you for your rounds of thanks. It's very much appreciated and very much appreciate your support also for the Congress and that you've been with us for the last day and a half. Now it's my great pleasure to invite Dr. Alejandro Iza. Dr. Iza is the director of the IUCN Environmental Law Center in Bonn in Germany. Alejandro is an environmental lawyer with a long trajectory in environmental policy and legal formulation and implementation of laws, especially with regard to water law, which is so relevant to our Congress here. Alejandro studied at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. He holds a Master of Laws from the University of London, and he did his PhD in international law at the University of Buenos Aires, again on the topic of integration in the European Union, an ever timely topic, Alejandro. Very welcome that you're here with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. And first of all, let me thank the colleagues of the World Commission on Environmental Law for inviting me to this gathering today, and also to the Hassan II International Center for Environmental Training for organizing this Congress. Colleagues, after all the presentations you have heard from distinguished colleagues on how to advance the environmental rule of law in land and water, and to address desertification, I would like to ask you for your attention in the next few minutes to reflect on some critical issues about the linkages between land, water, and ecosystems management within the context of major global challenges like climate change. Within natural resources, and especially water, we hold the false belief that resources are unlimited and that we are sitting on inexhaustible supplies. 350 years before our era, the Greek statesman Demosthenes said, "Sources and wells also dry up if you draw from them too often and too much." And this predicament, I think, is still valid today. Yet poor planning, inadequate land management, the lack of political will, the insufficient cooperation between neighbor states, and the institutional weaknesses all threaten access to water, land use, and exacerbate desertification. Indeed, extensive and many times unsustainable agricultural practices to feed increasing demands for food, perverse incentives, subsidies, and unrealistic prices for water demand-intensive products compromise the health of the land, increase erosion, create further conditions to enable and enlarge desertification. The link between water and land, in other words, between what I would say water and life on Earth, justifies the past, informs the present, and enables the future. Food production, nutrition, hygiene, sanitation, ecosystems and livelihoods, well-being, peace and security are all strongly dependent on water. The UN General Assembly, you know, formally recognized in 2010 the human right to water and sanitation. The reality of its implementation, however, shows a very different picture. Excessive exploitation, inadequate distribution, pollution, plastics, unequal access, and inappropriate management. Land is part and puzzle of this complex scenario. Water, in the majority of the cases, runs over land, except groundwater and atmospheric water, which is part of a broader spectrum of interactions that clearly relate to land uses and desertification, and is the hydrologic cycle. By affecting natural forces like rain, snow, ice cover, temperature, and evaporation, climate change is increasingly provoking and will continue to do so extreme conditions in many areas of the world. The critical linkages between water land, and climate change cannot be underestimated, neither from a purely technical, factual point of view, nor from a legal angle. In spite of this, it does not seem to be appropriately and adequately reflected both in the context of international processes or within national actions. Even the best efforts to systematically address these challenges today can be compromised by the lack of a comprehensive policy and law that levels the playing field, clarifies the rules, and prepares a country to effectively manage its water and related resources and processes. Water poor quality will exacerbate biodiversity loss and ecosystem breakdowns unless addressed comprehensively by designing and implementing enhanced land and water planning, management strategies, and the legal and the regulatory frameworks. The referred disruptions will be evident. Water access will divide human societies and exacerbate biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse in the coming years. The current humanitarian situation in countries like Madagascar are the results of deforestation, land degradation, and the effects of climate variability. Large parts of this country are being affected by severe drought, and 1 million people are in need of food. This is a situation we have seen before in other countries of Africa like South Sudan and Ethiopia, and it is one that is displacing and forcing people to flee within and outside continents, and hence call for a combined political, economic, humanitarian, and even an environmental response. Other extreme events like the floods affecting parts of Nigeria will challenge water and land managers, decision makers, and the society at large better to figure out how to better plan and to better govern the land and the water in the years to come. But also richer countries from the north that so far might have thought extreme weather and associated natural catastrophes are realities from the big south are now forced to realize that this is also happening around the corner, and the impacts of climate change on land and water are coming closer. The best example is what happened a few days ago, just 10 to 15 kilometers away from where I am sitting at the moment here in Germany. Almost 200 people died, others disappeared, thousands lost their households, basic infrastructure was destroyed. The government estimates that it will take years to rebuild the damages, and the costs go up to 6 billion euros. So what is exactly what we need to do from a policy and legal perspective, apart from debating about these issues? Simply, I would say, realize the urgency of the matter and act quickly. Many of the required solutions to land degradation and desertification are not new, but will need proper consideration of some of the specific measures associated with land, water, and natural determinants of water uses. Traditional practices, notably inspired by local communities like in sub-Saharan Africa, grounded in centuries of local and tailored know-how, will also have to be factored and adequately integrated in the measures to address this puzzle. It seems that attention to ecosystems and human well-being has significantly increased in recent times at last. We have been hearing a lot about ecosystem services, ecosystems adaptation or ecosystem-based adaptation, ecosystems-based recovery, and now nature-based solutions. And everybody talks about climate change. So all this is showing, on the one hand, that urgency, and on the other hand, is also showing that the use of the power of well-functioning ecosystems as infrastructure to provide services to benefit societies while securing the environment and containing the impact of global challenges. And this predicts that action is required at various levels, and looking at larger scales, taking a holistic territorial basin-wide approach to water and resources planning and management. In my view, it is key. It is a key step to reconcile the magnitude of the intervention required with the multiplicity and the multidimensional interaction of activities and stakeholders. And last but not least, the need to develop a long-term strategic action that caters for a proper integration of water, land, and other resources to be incorporated within climate change plans well before projects, programs, and any initiatives are proposed and implemented. These are new old grounds where all our efforts for improved governance, frameworks, and resource management require attention. Certainly, our urgent attention before it is too late and even further changes become irreversible. As Richard von Weizsäcker, the former president of Germany, said, people need nature. Nature does not need people. People are part of nature and not above it. Only when people realize this, they have a chance of survival. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iza. Thank you, Alejandro, for your words of urgency and pointing out to the magnitude of the task before us. In a way, you drew a full circle, a full hydrological circle around our Congress. Justice Antonio Benjamin opened the Congress yesterday, pointing out that water is life. Where is water, there is life. And you, in a way, came back to his important remarks, and that draws a very nice framework or umbrella around our day and a half of deliberations about water, deforestation, soil degradation, desertification, and climate change. With that, I would like to give the floor back to Justice Antonio Benjamin for some final notes of thank you.
Well, many thanks. We are all tired, and it's a very risky business to have a duty to thank people and institutions when you are very tired. And today, because of the time zone difference, I was up at 5 a.m. But it is important that we remember or remind all of us that this Congress would not have happened without people and institutions. And I begin thanking my colleagues from the World Commission on Environmental Law, the members of the steering committee, and I would like to convey my gratitude to all of them, thanking Professor Christina Voigt, that has been with us since the opening yesterday. Many thanks to the scientific committee that helped us in design in such a short period of time this magnificent program. It's so magnificent that we are, 30 minutes or 40 minutes late. There is so much in the program in terms of substance, the past, the present, and the future. Many thanks to all speakers, chairs. Many thanks to the participants, those that are in person in Rabat, and those that are and were with us virtually. My final word of gratitude is to the partners. First of all, UNEP, Robert Wabunoha, but also Elizabeth Mrema is still here, Arnold Krajhuba, and the whole team of UNEP. Everything that WCL does, I'm repeating myself from yesterday, together with UNEP and with the secretariats of the most, the conventions that are closer to our work, the MEAs. So please, Robert Wabunoha, convey to your colleagues our gratitude for the work in this Congress, but also for the work that you have been doing since the establishment of UNEP. And my very last word of gratitude is to our Moroccan colleagues. And I put it in plural, but I'll single out one person. But of course, in singling out one person, and this person is Ayman Cherkaoui, I want to convey to the foundation, to the center, to the colleagues that were there present, our deepest appreciation. But appreciation that comes with admiration. Fantastic work that you have done. We couldn't have selected a better partner. This is the good news. The bad news is that we will probably be knocking on the door of the two institutions pretty soon for other activities. That's the price that we pay for success. Working together and achieving results. Many thanks to the staff of the Secretariat. And Grethel Aguilar is still here with us. Please convey to Bruno, to your colleagues. Luther is still here with us. The admiration that we all have and the gratitude that you have, that we have for the good work that you do for conservation globally. Many thanks to all of you. And with that, I will ask Professor Christina Voigt to give the floor, Ayman Cherkaoui for the closing. Many thanks to all of you again, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Antonio. There is one little thing we would like to do before we give the floor to Ayman Cherkaoui, and that is, Antonio, to thank you for organizing this wonderful African Environmental Law Congress. We know you started the World Environmental Law Congress Series 2016 with the magnificent first Environmental Law Congress in Rio de Janeiro, which produced the 2016 WCL declaration on the rule of law, environmental rule of law, and you didn't. There was no effort you spared to make the second environmental law Congress happening in Rio last year as well. Due to the current pandemic, that was not possible, and everybody who knows you would agree that you never give up. There is a plan and you make it happen. And this is how we ended up with these wonderful and very, very important and timely regional hybrid events. They would not have happened without your leadership, without your vision, without your support and your guidance. So our thanks from all of us go to you. Thank you so much.
But please make sure that we convey our thanks to Emily Gaskin, that has been with us all the time. Emily, many, many thanks.
Thank you, Emily, as well. And now I would like to thank Ayman for his unfaltering support, tireless support in making the African Environmental Law Congress happening. I know there was a lot of days and nights of work that went into it, but apparently it paid all out because this was a fantastic event, so rich in discussions and so wonderful in meeting people, although it's done some only virtually, but I'm sure the connections established today will carry over into the real world. Ayman, thank you so much. And with that, the floor goes back to you.
Merci beaucoup, merci infiniment. Cette session s'intitule « Clôture et remerciements spéciaux ». Très brièvement, j'essaierai de faire les deux. Et pour encadrer la partie clôture de cette intervention, j'aimerais partager avec vous une citation de Sa Majesté le Roi, Mohamed VI, qui date de 2017, qui disait, début de citation, « Nous, peuple d'Afrique, avons les moyens et le génie, et nous pouvons, ensemble, réaliser les aspirations de nos peuples. » Fin de citation. Il me semble clair que ce congrès est aligné avec cette vision d'encapacitation. D'un côté, il est évident que nous avons soulevé beaucoup de solutions entre sœurs et frères africains, ainsi qu'au niveau global dans le cadre de la coopération internationale. Pour la partie remerciements spéciaux, je ne peux que me joindre aux remerciements qui ont déjà été exprimés, en particulier, bien sûr, envers le président de la Commission mondiale du droit de l'environnement, Justice Antonio, qui, comme ça a été rappelé, n'abandonne jamais, continue à nous inspirer, est avec nous depuis 5 heures du matin localement sur les 2 jours. Et je pense que ce type d'engagement est on ne peut plus salutaire et on devrait en être particulièrement reconnaissant. Bien évidemment, l'ensemble de la commission s'est mobilisé. Ça a aussi été le cas d'Emily Gaskin, qui a été mentionnée, de plusieurs membres de la commission qui se sont associés au sein de ce comité scientifique qui a collaboré à son élaboration, à son assise intellectuelle et au terme de fondement à Robert Wabunoha, à professeur Kibugi, au Justice Emmanuel, à Justice Eliza Samuel, ainsi qu'un des récipiendaires du prix Nicholas Robinson de tout à l'heure, le professeur Ali Mekwa. Je remercie et je félicite aussi en même temps les récipiendaires de ce prix, donc je viens de l'indiquer, le professeur Mekwa, ainsi que Madame Mrema. Je remercie le Programme des Nations Unies de l'environnement pour leur engagement, leur soutien et leur contribution. Je remercie bien entendu l'ensemble des participants intervenants, coprésidents de ce riche programme que nous avons auquel nous avons pu contribuer au cours de ces 2 journées. Je remercie les participants au niveau virtuel, les participants physiques. Et ici, au Centre international Hassan II de la formation de l'environnement, au nom de la Fondation Mohamed VI pour la protection de l'environnement, présidée, comme ça a été rappelé, d'avoir pu tenir avec vous cet événement. Nous espérons pouvoir tenir d'autres sur d'autres thématiques tout aussi pertinentes pour notre continent et notre région. Dans cette optique, en termes de remerciements, je tiens aussi à saluer la contribution mon collègue, M. Hamza Ouazgan, mon collègue bien sûr très connu au niveau de l'IUCN, qui est une star en quelque sorte, qui est le docteur Haddan, ainsi que l'équipe technique qui nous a soutenus et l'ensemble des traducteurs. Merci beaucoup, ça a été 2 journées très riches, 2 journées complexes en termes de différentes modalités techniques, de différentes modalités de traduction, et nous sommes très reconnaissants pour l'engagement de tous. Merci beaucoup.